This is Mac OS Ken.
A look at iPhone and the smartphone market. A look at the Mac and the PC market. And minor OS updates draw nigh. It is Wednesday, the 19th of July, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken. Brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code MacOSKen50 at factormeals.com/MacOSKen50 for 50% off. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. If Counterpoint research is to be believed, the good news is things are going to get better for smartphones. The bad news? It has not happened yet. Global smartphone market declines for 8th straight quarter blares the headline of a recent release from the firm. According to Counterpoint, smartphone sales were down 8% for the June quarter versus the same quarter a year earlier. They were also down 5% versus the March quarter, which totally makes sense. First quarter sales for Samsung would have been relatively strong thanks to the late in the quarter release of the latest A-series phones. Sales of iPhone would have also been relatively strong as Apple worked to make up for sales missed over the holidays. Man, remember that? If you're trying to figure out the best performance in Counterpoint's numbers, there are at least a couple of ways to go. The firm says Samsung led the quarter with global market share of 22%. That's the same as this time last year on a sales decline of 12%. While iPhone sales also dropped, the drop was much smaller, falling only 2% according to Counterpoint, and Apple's market share actually grew, rising from 2Q22's 16% globally to last quarter's 17%. That was the company's highest ever Q2 market share, according to Counterpoint. Doing well are premium phones. Priced $600 or more wholesale, Counterpoint says the premium segment was the only segment that grew during the quarter, reaching its highest ever Q2 contribution to the overall market. More than 1 out of 5 smartphones sold during the quarter belonged to the premium segment. That is, of course, where iPhone lives, hence its highest ever Q2 market share. While Counterpoint says it expects the smartphone market to recover slowly in the coming quarters, it also lists a lot working against the way things used to be. According to the firm, the global smartphone market now seems to be well past its rapid growth phase, with consumer replacement cycles getting longer, convergence in device innovation, and the emergence of a more mature, refurbished market for smartphones hitting particularly the high-volume, low to mid-tier price segment demand. So when they say recover, I'm thinking they mean this year sets up a good comparison for next year. Now let's check back in about a year. As iPhone goes, so goes TSMC. That's probably not completely true, though the former certainly does affect the latter. Apple Insider says Apple's chip-making partner for devices like iPhone, iPad, and the Mac will reveal its financial numbers for the second quarter on Thursday, and they are not expected to be good. The piece says analysts are expecting profit to drop about 27% for the June quarter versus the same quarter a year ago. That said, indications are that things should start to pick up in the third quarter. According to the report, a senior Taiwan fund manager believes the profits in the third quarter will bounce back because of the rise in artificial intelligence projects and the iPhone 15 lineup that Apple will launch later in 2023. As iPhone goes, so goes TSMC. For the future of iPhone, it seems India's importance cannot be overstated. The Counterpoint note from earlier noted 50% growth for iPhone in India in the second quarter versus the same quarter a year earlier. Earlier this week, Morgan Stanley raised its price target on Apple shares from $190 to $220 based on anticipated growth in India. Now, a piece from Apple MOSK has Apple contract manufacturing partner Foxconn building more plants to build more parts to build more iPhones in India. The piece has M.B. Patil, Minister of Infrastructure Development for Karnataka, posting on Twitter that Foxconn Industrial Internet will be building high-quality outer covers for iPhones in his region. Outer covers may sound small potatoes, though Apple MOSK says the plant will also make screens and mechanical components for iPhones. Foxconn's investment will be worth roughly $1.07 billion. It'll also generate over 14,000 job opportunities, according to Minister Patil. What do iPhone and the Mac have in common? They're both made by Apple, and they both fared better than most competitors last quarter. More numbers from Counterpoint Research show good news for Apple amidst bad news in the personal computer market, though even that had a bit of good news. While PC shipments were down for the second quarter of 2023 versus the same quarter a year earlier, they were up versus the first quarter of this year. That represented the first quarter-on-quarter growth for the sector since the first quarter of 2022. Apple did not come close to shipping the highest number of computers in the second quarter. It came in fourth, shipping an estimated 5.5 million Macs by Counterpoint's count. It was the only one to show growth, though, with shipments rising 8% year-on-year. Props to second place HP, which saw shipments decline only 1%, practically flat. Shipments for the rest of the top 5 fell by somewhere between 18% and 22%. More news in a moment, but first a word from Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit and sponsor of today's show. If you're looking for meals that won't weigh you down or slow you down this summer, you are looking for Factor. Whether you're opting for convenience or working on a wellness plan, Factor has amazing ready-to-eat meals featuring high-quality ingredients that are never frozen, always fresh. Factor has over 30 restaurant-quality options every week, like grilled steakhouse filet mignon, green goddess chicken, and bruschetta shrimp risotto. It's less expensive than takeout, and it's faster too. 10 minutes in the oven or 2 minutes in the microwave, and you are eating so well. I've been blown away by the proteins in my Factor meals, and the sauces, and the convenience. Try them for yourself and see. Head to factormeals.com/macOSKen50 and use code macOSKen50 to get 50% off. That's code macOSKen50 at factormeals.com/macOSKen50 to get 50% off. Taste what has made Factor America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code macOSKen50 for 50% off at factormeals.com/macOSKen50. A super annoying story out of Spain. 9to5Mac says authorities there have found Apple and Amazon guilty of collusion, leading to higher prices for Apple gear sold through the online superseller. This all springs from a sort of global deal between the two firms. According to 9to5Mac, the case dates back to 2018, when the two companies reached a multi-country agreement to restrict the sale of Apple and Beats products to Apple-authorized resellers. The deal, which applied in the US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Japan, and India, resulted in the creation of an official Apple store on Amazon. It also decimated small sellers who had sold Apple gear on Amazon, since the numbers needed to be an Apple-authorized reseller were higher than most small businesses could make. 9to5Mac says more than 90% of small businesses that had sold Apple gear on Amazon had their store removed from Amazon after the deal. The piece says antitrust authorities in Spain have found the two companies acted inappropriately. They've also fined the two companies the equivalent of $218 million. And now we hit the super annoying part. To whom will that $218 million go? Will it make up for 5 years of missed sales by small businesses run out of business, assuming any of it actually goes to them, which I kind of assume it won't? Also, are Apple and Amazon supposed to feel $218 million? If you're going to do something, do something. While Apple and Amazon combined absolutely would not feel $218 million, they will not willingly part with it either. A piece from Reuters indicates that the two companies plan to appeal the ruling in Spain. There's been a bit of a clarification around the changes being made to the Goldman Sachs administered Apple high-yield savings account. I told you yesterday of one user who got an apology from the bank for how slow the bank moved in releasing funds the user was trying to withdraw. They also received a one-time goodwill credit of $100 for their trouble. Now a piece from 9to5Mac says the two firms have updated the deposit agreement for users. According to that, they say transfers may take up to 3 business days to process. However, 9to5Mac says that stipulation is only about how long it might take for Goldman Sachs to process and approve the transfer, not actually move the money. Also, that 3 days is a bit squiffy. What the change actually says is, we are not required to accept or execute any ACH transfer instruction. It generally takes up to 3 business days to process a transfer. Additionally, the bank offers more detail around maximum balances for accounts. Ultimately, the piece says, it's clear that Apple Card Savings Account has experienced multiple growing pains since its launch back in April. And finally today, while these may not be the last updates ahead of Apple's big OS updates in the fall, new release candidates from Apple have a cleanup kind of feel. Mac Rumors ran a few reports Tuesday saying that developers had gotten access to release candidates of iOS and iPadOS 16.6, macOS Ventura 13.5, watchOS 9.6, and tvOS 16.6. Notes for the releases indicate improvements, bug fixes, and an intention to lock up on the way out. Similarly, a piece from Apple Insider says Apple has issued release candidates for iOS 15.7.8, iPadOS 15.7.8, macOS Big Sur 11.7.9, and Monterey 12.6.8. Expecting new features for Monterey? Well, don't. The report says Apple does occasionally make updates to its earlier operating systems, which are commonly used with devices that cannot support the latest operating system versions. These updates tend to consist of security fixes and compatibility additions, rather than handling new features. macOS Can, brought to you by me, and sponsored by Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Use code macOSCAN50 at factormeals.com/macOSCAN50 for 50% off. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCAN. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macOSCAN.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.